Welcome to Wisdom for the Present, where we take ancient truth and bring it into clear, modern understanding. This episode uses AI-generated narration based on human-researched and written material.
And we have a really intense one today.
We do. So I want you to imagine losing your entire life savings, your business, your reputation, and your entire family. Mm-hmm. And all this happens in a span of about 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's unthinkable.
Right. And then, as you are sitting in the wreckage of your life, physically sick from the stress, your 3 best friends show up.
The ones you really rely on.
Exactly. And they sit in silence for a week, staring at you. And then they lean in and tell you that it is entirely your fault.
I mean, it is the ultimate nightmare scenario. It strips away every single comfort, every defense mechanism, and, well, every assumption we have about how the universe actually operates.
It really does. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore the book of Job, specifically chapters 1 through 31.
And we aren't just walking through a summary of some ancient story here.
No, not at all. We are framing this entire conversation around a central burning question that this text forces you to confront. Why do humans instinctively blame victims for their own suffering?
That's the big one.
Right. And beneath that, do any of us actually do good just for the sake of being good? Or is it always transactional? Like, are we only good because it pays off?
That is the core of it, really. So we're going to act as your guides today.
Yeah.
We're using the ancient text alongside some incredibly rich human research commentaries.
Specifically Barnes' notes and Matthew Henry's commentary, right?
Exactly. Because we want to extract the practical wisdom from what is, frankly, one of the most intense psychological and theological texts ever written.
Oh, absolutely.
But to really grasp why this story hits so hard, we cannot just jump straight to the disaster. We have to understand what was actually lost.
Right, we have to establish the setting.
Yeah, we have to step into the historical and human context of the world we're entering.
Okay, so the setup. The story opens in the land of Uz. So, who is this guy and where exactly are we?
Well, based on the historical commentaries, particularly Barnes, Uz was likely located in the eastern part of Arabia.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere near Chaldea and the Euphrates River. So this is a semi-nomadic tribal world. And Job is described essentially as an emir.
An emir, like a ruler.
Right. He is a magistrate, a judge, a man of significant judicial authority, and a man of unfathomable wealth.
But I think it's crucial we translate that wealth into modern terms carefully. Because, I mean, when we say wealth today, we think of things that are relatively stable.
Oh, definitely.
We think of index funds, right? Diversified stock portfolios, real estate, maybe a trust fund. It's abstract and it's protected by laws and insurance.
That's a really vital distinction to make. The commentaries point out that in this ancient setting, land ownership in fee simple.
Wait, fee simple?
Yeah, it's a legal term.
Yeah.
It basically means absolute permanent ownership of the dirt itself, like how we buy a house today.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't the primary measure of wealth back then. Wealth was measured in mobile living assets.
Wow, that sounds incredibly risky.
It was terrifyingly fragile because your net worth had to eat, drink, and survive the elements. Mm-hmm. They could literally walk away, get sick, or just be stolen.
So what exactly did his portfolio look like? Because the text gives a very specific inventory.
It does.
It says he had 7,000 sheep, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and 3,000 camels.
Let's actually break down the mechanics of that, because it isn't just a random list of animals. It's a perfectly diversified, ancient mega corporation.
A mega corporation? How so?
Think about 7,000 sheep. That isn't just wool and meat. That requires an enormous labor force. You need hundreds of shepherds, shearers, and guards.
Right, you need a whole staff.
And it dictates migration patterns, because 7,000 sheep will decimate a pasture in a matter of days.
Wow.
Then you have 500 yoke of oxen. That's 1,000 animals paired up.
Wait, hold on. If he's a nomad, why does he need 1,000 oxen? I thought oxen were primarily for plowing.
Brilliant catch. That specific detail tells us he wasn't just a wandering herdsman. He was an agro-pastoralist.
An agro-pastoralist.
Right. He was heavily involved in cultivating the soil on a massive, almost industrial scale for that era. He is running a massive agricultural enterprise alongside his livestock.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about the donkeys?
The 500 female donkeys. So the commentaries note that females were highly prized, much more so than males.
Really? Why is that?
Because of their milk, which was a vital staple, and their incredible value for desert travel and carrying heavy loads.
And then the camels. The text highlights 3,000 camels.
The ships of the desert. 3,000 camels is a staggering geopolitical level of wealth.
Geopolitical, like nation-state level.
Exactly. To put that in perspective, Barnes notes that a later king of Persia considered it a devastating national economic crisis when 3,000 of his 7,000 camels were stolen.
Oh, wow. So Job basically owns the ancient equivalent of a massive logistics and trucking fleet.
Precisely. Camels could carry up to 500 pounds of cargo, and they could travel for 30 days without a single drop of water.
That's wild.
It's all thanks to their unique internal biological reservoirs. They were the ultimate asset for dominating regional trade routes.
So he is arguably the wealthiest man in the East. But, the text doesn't just focus on his bank account. It makes a very specific, emphatic point about his character.
It does indeed.
It says he was perfect and upright. Now, whenever I read that word perfect, my modern cynic alarm goes off immediately.
Oh, of course it does.
Because nobody is perfect. It makes him sound like a cartoon character of piety,
And that is exactly how we usually misinterpret it today. The commentaries are very careful to clarify this. It absolutely does not mean he was sinless.
Okay, good.
He was a human being subject to the same passions, mistakes, and flaws as anyone else. The Hebrew root word used here is tamam.
Tamam. What does that actually mean?
It translates much more accurately to complete or proportionate.
Proportionate.
Yeah.
How so? Give me a visual for that.
Think of a classical Roman arch. Every single stone is cut to a specific proportion, and they all lean on one another. The arch is incredibly strong. Not because any single stone is indestructible, but because the weight is perfectly distributed.
Right. The engineering behind it.
Exactly. Everything is in its proper place. That was Job's life. His piety, his role as a father, his massive business dealings, his treatment of his workers.
They all just aligned.
They all aligned and supported each other. He was sincere, he actively turned away from evil, and he was deeply devoted. His character had structural integrity.
Structural integrity, I like that. And he was so devoted that he actually carried a massive psychological burden for his family's structural integrity, too.
Oh, definitely.
The text describes how his 7 sons and 3 daughters would have these regular feasts. They'd rotate from house to house.
Like a constant family reunion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And after the feasts were over, Job would get up early in the morning and offer burnt sacrifices for each of them.
Every single one.
But here's the crazy part. He didn't do it because they had openly blasphemed. He did it just in case they had sinned and renounced God in their hearts.
In their hearts.
Yeah, he's offering preemptive sacrifices for their internal thoughts.
It shows a profound, almost agonizing level of spiritual vigilance on his part. He recognized that outward conformity isn't enough.
Right.
He cared deeply about the internal hidden posture of his family's hearts. He knew how easily wealth and feasting could lead to an internal drifting away from God.
Yeah.
Even if the outward manners remained impeccable.
Okay, well, here's where I want to push back on this whole setup, because I think a lot of people listening are probably thinking the exact same thing right now.
Let's hear it.
If we translate Job into modern terms, he sounds like a beloved billionaire CEO.
Sure.
He has a massive estate, unimaginable wealth, a huge staff handling his daily needs, healthy kids, and unimpeachable ethics. But how much of his modern goodness is tied directly to the privilege of his comfortable life? I mean, it is remarkably easy to be generous when you have 7,000 sheep to spare. It's easy to be at peace with the universe when everything just goes your way.
That is a very common modern comparison. But let me push back on your analogy just a little bit.
Okay, fair.
A modern billionaire is highly insulated. They have LLCs, offshore accounts, private security, and diversified portfolios that survive market crashes.
Right. The safety net is huge.
Job's wealth, as we discussed earlier, was entirely exposed. It could die of disease. It could be stolen by raiders in an afternoon. His wealth was vast, but it was incredibly fragile.
That's a good point.
However, your core premise is absolutely correct, and you have essentially just voiced the central accusation of the entire book.
Which brings us to chapters 1 and 2, the cosmic wager.
The setup for the whole tragedy.
Right. We shift from the dirt and dust of us to a divine council. The text says the sons of God, which the ancient audience would understand as celestial beings or members of a divine court.
Yeah, the divine assembly.
They come to present themselves to God, to give an account of their governance across the universe. And among them comes Satan.
Well, let's pause right here and radically adjust our modern lens. We really need to define the ancient context of the word Satan.
Yeah, because we have a very specific image of that word today.
In modern times, that word carries a very specific caricatured image. Red horns, pitchfork, ruler of hell.
Right.
But in this ancient Hebrew text, the word shun is actually a title. It means the adversary or the accuser.
The accuser.
Think of him almost like a prosecuting attorney within the divine council. Barnes' notes points out that he is not just some suspicious servant doing a routine audit. He is a malignant spirit.
Wow.
His specific role is to find flaws in humanity.
So God essentially asks this prosecuting attorney where he has been, and he says he's been walking to and fro in the earth.
Right.
Now, in English, to and fro sounds almost casual. It sounds like he's just taking a leisurely evening stroll through a garden.
The translation really softens the menace of the original text there. The Hebrew word used there is shu.
Shoo.
It definitely doesn't mean a leisurely walk. The mechanism of that word implies the action of a whip or a scourge.
Oh, wow.
It's a rapid, frenetic, lashing movement. He is whipping across the earth, surveying the globe with a malignant, predatory intensity.
Looking for a target.
Actively looking for structural weaknesses to exploit. He is looking to inflict heat and damage.
So God points out Job. He says, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one like him. He is perfect and upright."
And the adversary issues the challenge that sets the entire tragedy in motion.
He asks the ultimate question. Does Job fear God for naught?
There it is.
He's accusing Job of having a mercenary transactional religion. He basically tells God, of course he's good. You pay him to be good. You put a hedge around him.
The word hedge is fascinating. In Hebrew, it's suk. It means a palisado, a defensive, thorny fortification.
It's thorny fortification.
The adversary is arguing that Job's virtue is purely circumstantial. He is saying, Job doesn't love you. He loves the stuff you give him. He loves the safety you provide.
The insulation.
Exactly. The accusation is that if you remove the suk, if you tear down that defensive perimeter and take away the compensation, the true, selfish, ugly nature of the man will be completely exposed.
And this is where the text gets terrifying, because God actually allows the test.
He does.
He gives the accuser permission to touch all that Job has, but with one strict boundary: he cannot touch Job's physical body.
Right. Physical harm is off the table initially.
What follows is a sequence of calamities that is so overwhelming it's hard to even process. And the pacing of it, the way the author writes the delivery of the news, is critical. The messengers literally overlap each other.
We have to analyze the psychology of that pacing. Why did the author structure it so that the messengers arrive while the previous one is still speaking?
It's relentless.
Because Satan knows exactly how human trauma works. He wants to overwhelm Job's nervous system with the suddenness and the sheer compounding scale of the loss.
Right.
If Job had a week between tragedies, he might rebuild his faith. He might process the grief and re-stabilize his emotional arch.
He'd have time to breathe.
Satan hits him so fast that he has absolutely no time to recover his psychological balance between blows. It is entirely designed to induce total spiritual collapse.
So let's walk through that terrible day. Job is probably just sitting at home. A messenger runs in, panting, bleeding, first blow.
The Sagans.
Yeah, Sadians. A predatory, wandering tribe from the south. They attack. They stole all 1,000 oxen and all 500 donkeys, and they slaughtered the servants with swords.
So Job has just lost his entire agricultural engine and transport fleet in one moment.
But while that man is still speaking before Job can even take a full breath, a second messenger bursts in.
Second blow, the fire of God, which the commentary suggests was likely an unnatural massive lightning storm or maybe a freak atmospheric fire.
It fell straight from the sky.
And it burned up all 7,000 sheep and the shepherds. His primary source of ongoing wealth gone in a flash of extreme weather.
And while he is speaking, a third messenger arrives. Chaldean marauders from the north swoop down in 3 tactical bands. They stole all 3,000 camels and killed those servants.
His logistics empire, his geopolitical leverage, completely wiped out.
So in maybe 2 minutes, he has gone from the wealthiest man in the East to entirely bankrupt.
But the worst is yet to come. Because, money is just money.
Right.
While the third messenger is still speaking, the fourth arrives. And this is the blow that absolutely shatters the world.
A massive freak tornado sweeps in from the wilderness.
It struck the 4 corners of the oldest brother's house where all 10 of Job's children were feasting.
The roof collapsed.
All of his sons and daughters are dead.
It's unfathomable, just the sheer concentration of grief. In the span of perhaps 5 minutes, the greatest man of the East has lost his enterprise, his wealth, his staff, and every single one of his children. His entire future, his legacy, just gone.
And this brings us back to our central question. The hedge is gone. The transactional benefits of his faith have been violently revoked. How does the perfectly proportionate man react when the arch collapses?
Well, his reaction is stunning in its restraint. He tears his robe, he shaves his head.
Which were the traditional ancient Near Eastern signs of deep, agonizing mourning.
Right. He falls to the ground. But he doesn't curse. He actually worships.
It's incredible.
He says, "Naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked will I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord."
He absorbs the absolute worst the universe can throw at him, and his integrity holds. He recognizes that he brought nothing into the world, and he has no intrinsic legal right to demand anything from it.
His faith wasn't transactional after all.
Exactly.
But the prosecuting attorney isn't done. The divine council reconvenes. God says, look, he holds fast to his integrity. And Satan essentially moves the goalposts.
He changes the terms of the argument entirely.
He claims that a man will give anything for his own life. Skin for skin, he says. He argues that Job only maintained his piety because his own biological body was spared.
He's saying people can detach from their possessions, even their families, if their own survival instinct is fully intact.
Right. So the accuser asks for, and is granted, permission to strike Job's flesh. He just can't kill him.
The physical affliction that follows is absolutely horrific. Job is covered from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head in agonizing, weeping, painful sores.
It sounds like pure torture.
He is highly contagious, or at least perceived to be, so he's exiled from his own home. He is reduced to sitting in the ashes of the local dump.
The local dump.
Yeah, and he's using a broken piece of pottery, a potsherd, to aggressively scrape his wounds to relieve the unbearable itching and remove the infection. He has lost his health, his dignity, and his place in society.
And this brings us to Job's wife, who we have to remember she has suffered the exact same economic and family losses that he has.
She lost her 10 children, too.
Exactly. She walks out to the ash heap, sees him scraping his disfigured skin, and she says, "Do you still maintain your integrity? Renounce God and die." Some modern translations say, "Curse God and die."
This is a linguistic pivot point that is absolutely fascinating. We really have to unpack the mechanism of the Hebrew word she uses here.
Okay, let's hear it.
The word is barak. And ironically, barak actually means to bless.
Wait, what?
But in ancient context, it evolved to mean both blessing and cursing, depending entirely on the context.
But how can the same word mean both bless and curse? That seems completely contradictory.
Think about how it was used in daily life back then. Barak was the word used when parting from someone, when bidding them farewell. You bless them as they leave.
Ah, I see.
Over time, when applied to God in a negative context, blessing God as a farewell became a euphemism for dismissing him, renouncing him, or saying goodbye to him forever.
That makes total sense.
The commentaries suggest she's essentially saying, bid farewell to God, dismiss him from your life. What's so powerful about this is that it shows how agonizingly close praise and despair truly are. The same word holds both potentials.
Wow. So she isn't necessarily just being wicked.
Not at all. She is utterly, comprehensively broken by the grief. She cannot watch him suffer anymore and is urging him to let go, to break the rules, invite divine execution, and just end his torment.
But Job refuses. He tells her she is speaking like a foolish woman. He says, "Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil?" He holds the line.
He does.
But I want to pause here, because we have to address a massive obstacle to growth for the modern reader.
The unfairness of it all.
Yes. Everything we just discussed, this cosmic wager, using a human life and the lives of 10 children as chips in a divine bet, it makes modern audiences profoundly uncomfortable. It deeply offends our sensibilities of fairness.
It's deeply unsettling.
Why would God allow this? It feels arbitrary and cruel.
It does. It offends us because we inherently want the universe to be a safe, rational place. We want a neat, predictable equation, good inputs equal good outputs.
Right. Karma, basically.
But that is exactly what the text is aggressively challenging. It is directly attacking the assumption that good behavior guarantees a comfortable life. It strips away all the theological padding and forces you, the listener, to ask a terrifying question.
What's the question?
If every reward were taken away, if doing the right thing brought only pain, isolation, and ruin, would I still do it? Is my goodness transactional, or is it transformative?
Man, that is the ultimate stress test of human motive. And it leads to a profound psychological breakdown. Job doesn't stay perfectly calm forever.
No, he doesn't.
The initial shock wears off, and the reality of chronic, inescapable pain sets in. This brings us to chapter 3, the dark night of the soul. But right before he breaks, his friends arrive.
Yes. The news of his ruin spreads across the ancient trade routes. 3 of his friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, travel from their respective regions to comfort him.
And the text tells us that when they arrived and saw him from a distance, he was so disfigured by the disease and the grief that they didn't even recognize him.
And their initial reaction is incredible. We talk about how they mess up later, but their first instinct is actually a masterclass in empathy.
It really is. They weep aloud, they tear their robes, they throw dust in the air over their heads.
The physical expression of shared sorrow.
And then they sit down on the ground with him in the ashes for 7 days and 7 nights in complete, utter silence. They don't say a single word because they see that his grief is too great.
Why 7 days? Well, in the ancient Near East, 7 days was the traditional period of mourning for the dead. It's the root of the Jewish practice of sitting Shiva.
Right.
But there's a profound, actionable wisdom here for us today. Let's make this our first real point of practical application.
Okay, let's do it.
If you have a friend who goes through a sudden catastrophic trauma, say they lose a child or they get a terminal diagnosis, our modern instinct is to try to fix it.
Yeah, we want to solve the problem.
We want to fill the silence with platitudes. We say things like, everything happens for a reason, or at least you had them for a while, or God has a plan.
Right, and we say those things because the silence makes us uncomfortable. We want to relieve our own anxiety about their pain.
Exactly. But true empathy often requires presence without platitudes. The friends were perfect comforters, absolute models of supportive friendship until they opened their mouths.
Right.
Just sitting in the ashes, sharing the physical space of the trauma is often the most profound thing you can do. Let your shared humanity be the comfort.
But eventually the silence has to break. After a week of agonizing quiet, Job finally opens his mouth. And he doesn't curse God, but he curses the day of his birth.
It is a raw, unfiltered lament.
He wishes the night he was conceived had been barren. He wishes he had been a stillborn child.
He longs for Sheol, the grave. To understand this, we have to grasp the ancient concept of Sheol. It wasn't necessarily a fiery hell. It was the shadowy underworld, the place of the dead. Job notes that in Sheol, the prisoners are at ease. They don't hear the voice of the taskmaster. The small and the great are there, and the servant is free from his master.
He sees death as the ultimate equalizer.
Right. The socioeconomic hierarchies that define the living world are entirely erased in the grave. For a man in constant, excruciating physical pain, the grave looks like a sanctuary.
Translating this to our modern context, it is incredible how radically honest this ancient text is about depression and suicidal ideation.
It really doesn't hold back.
Job asks, why is light given to a man whose way is hidden? Why force someone to keep breathing when their life has become nothing but an inescapable prison of misery?
It's a haunting question.
And that is a question that resonates deeply today with anyone navigating chronic pain or severe mental health struggles. The text doesn't shy away from the ugly, raw reality of suffering.
And what is crucial here, and Matthew Henry's commentary points this out beautifully, is that God does not condemn Job for this raw lament.
He doesn't.
No. Henry sees Job in this moment as a type of Christ, mirroring the deep, sweating anguish of the soul, much like the agony in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Ooh, wow.
Job's despair isn't framed as a sin of rebellion. It's framed as an accurate, perfectly human reaction to an unbearable reality. He is allowed to scream at the darkness.
But his friends absolutely cannot handle it. Job's scream shatters their theological worldview.
It breaks their whole system.
So the 7 days of silence end, and we enter the massive multi-chapter debate between Job and his 3 friends. That spans from chapter 4 all the way to chapter 27.
It's a massive section.
And we have to spend significant time unpacking this debate because this is where we have to use real discernment. The friends say a lot of things that sound very religious, very pious, and very correct on the surface, but they are actually deeply unhelpful and fundamentally flawed.
We need to dissect their arguments because they represent archetypes of how humans have always responded to inexplicable suffering.
Let's start with Eliphaz.
Right, Eliphaz is the first to speak. He seems to be the oldest, and he comes across as the traditionalist, or maybe the mystic.
The mystic. I like that.
How so?
He bases his entire argument on a terrifying night vision he claims to have had. He says a spirit passed before his face, the hair on his flesh stood up, and a voice asked, "Shall mortal man be more just than God?"
It's a good key.
Yeah, very. Eliphaz's core argument is rooted in strict retributive theology. He believes the universe is a perfectly balanced moral equation. Good people get blessed, bad people suffer.
So A equals B.
Exactly. Therefore, because Job is suffering so immensely, Eliphaz's logic dictates that Job must have committed some secret, terrible sin.
It's the danger of the friend who says, well, God told me you're doing something wrong. You can't really argue with someone's private revelation.
Exactly.
Then, when Job rejects that, Bildad speaks up. Bildad is the historian. He appeals to past generations, to the ancient traditions.
Bildad's argument is basically, we've always known how the world works. Who are you to question the ancients? He uses this vivid, naturalistic analogy. He asks, can the papyrus grow up without mire? Can the rushes grow without water?
What does that mean exactly? Break that metaphor down for us.
He's observing nature. A papyrus plant needs swampy mud to thrive. Rushes need water. If you pull the water away, the plant withers and dies quickly.
Makes sense biologically.
Bildad is saying that just as a plant without water withers, a godless man withers. The implication is that God's favor is the water. Since Job is withered, he must have cut himself off from the water of God's favor through sin. It sounds poetic, but it's completely circular logic.
Yeah.
And then Bildad takes it to an unimaginably cruel extreme.
He really does. He actually looks at a grieving father, a man who just buried 10 children, and suggests that the children were killed because of their own sin.
It's brutal.
He tells Job, basically, your kids got what they deserve, so you should repent before it gets worse for you. It is breathtakingly arrogant.
And finally, we have Zophar. If Eliphaz is the mystic and Bildad is the historian, Zophar is the pure dogmatist.
The enforcer.
Exactly. He is blunt, aggressive, and entirely lacking in nuance. By the time he speaks, the rhetoric has escalated. He essentially tells Job to stop whining because God is actually punishing him less than his hidden iniquities deserve.
Okay, let's unpack this entire dynamic, because this is the most profound psychological insight in the whole book, and it maps perfectly onto how we behave today.
Oh, absolutely.
What the friends are doing is an ancient version of toxic positivity mixed with the dark side of the karma mindset. It's the just world fallacy.
Let's delve deep into the mechanics of that. The just world fallacy is a cognitive bias, where human beings desperately need to believe that the world is fair, that actions have fitting and proportionate consequences.
Why do we need that so badly?
Because if the world is random, if a perfectly good person can lose their children to a freak tornado and get a horrific disease for no reason, then we are all incredibly vulnerable.
Yes. So when someone we know gets cancer today, or loses their job, or experiences a sudden random tragedy, what is our immediate societal instinct?
We try to find the flaw.
We desperately try to figure out what that person did wrong. Did they eat processed foods? Did they not grind hard enough at the office? Did they manifest bad energy?
We do it constantly.
We do this because if we can pinpoint the reason they are suffering, if we can blame the victim, it protects our own illusion of safety.
We build a psychological hedge around ourselves by condemning them. We tell ourselves, well, I eat organic so I won't get sick, or I work 60 hours a week so I won't go bankrupt.
Right.
Job's friends are terrified by Job's suffering. If Job, the most righteous man they know, can be destroyed, then they are not safe either. The cognitive dissonance is just too loud.
They can't process it.
So to keep their own theological equation intact, they have to make it his fault. They sacrifice their friend on the altar of their theology to save their own peace of mind.
So we blame the victim to save ourselves. That is haunting. And Job pushes back fiercely. He refuses to be gaslit by their theology.
He fights back hard.
He calls them forgers of lies and physicians of no value. He tells them, the same do I know also. I'm not inferior unto you. He refuses to let them spiritualize his pain.
And how does he refute them? He doesn't use mysticism like Eliphaz. He uses empirical observation. He forces them to look at the actual observable reality of the world.
What does he point out?
He shatters their neat little retributive worldview by pointing out a terrifying fact. The wicked do prosper.
He paints this picture in chapter 21. He says, look around at the actual bad guys. They grow old, their wealth increases, their bulls breed without fail, their children dance to the tambourine.
They're having a great time.
They spend their days in wealth and prosperity, and then they die quietly and peacefully. They don't get struck by lightning.
This is the great obstacle to growth in this text, the hardest pill to swallow. Yeah. The universe is not a vending machine where good deeds equal earthly rewards and bad deeds equal immediate punishment.
It's just not how it works.
The friends' arguments are a theological trap. They represent a tidy system that fails completely in the face of real human experience. Job demands that they look at reality. not just their religious theories. He demands intellectual honesty.
So this intense debate goes round and round for over 20 chapters, exhausting everyone. The friends get more entrenched, Job gets more frustrated, and they hit an absolute deadlock. Neither side can convince the other.
It's a total stalemate.
And then the text does something incredibly interesting. In chapter 28, the narrative pauses. We get this beautiful, almost standalone interlude. It's often called the Hymn to Wisdom.
It is a profound poetic meditation on human ingenuity versus divine wisdom. And the imagery here is striking because it is deeply industrial. It describes ancient mining techniques.
Mining.
Yeah, the author wants to highlight the absolute zenith of human capability.
The details of the mining operations are incredible. It says men set an end to darkness, cutting shafts away from where people live. They hang suspended, swinging from ropes in dark, claustrophobic shafts to find sapphires and gold dust.
It sounds like an action movie.
Right. They cut channels in the rocks, they dam up streams, and they literally overturn mountains by the roots to see every precious thing. The technological and engineering achievement of humanity is being celebrated here.
Think about the mechanism of ancient mining. They used fire setting, where they would build massive fires against rock faces to heat them, then douse them with cold water to crack the stone.
Wow, that's incredibly dangerous.
Highly technical, extremely dangerous work. The author acknowledges that human beings are capable of astonishing feats. We can extract the most hidden, precious physical treasures from the deepest, darkest, most inaccessible parts of the earth. We can figure out how the physical world works.
We're smart.
And here is the profound turn in the poem, where can wisdom be found? Where is the place of understanding?
Man doesn't know its price. The text says it can't be bought with the gold of Ophir, the Ethiopian topaz. You can't exchange it for jewels of fine gold. The deep sea says it is not in me.
The conclusion of this hymn is that ultimate wisdom, understanding the why of the universe, the reason behind suffering, the grand design, is not a human discovery.
You can't dig for it.
Exactly. It cannot be mined, engineered, or bought. It is divine revelation. Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding.
So it's about reverence.
True wisdom isn't about figuring out the mechanics of the universe or solving the equation of suffering. It is about a posture of reverence. It is a commitment to ethical living and awe, even when the universe remains a total mystery.
Which perfectly sets up Jug's final stand in chapters 29 through 31. He stops arguing with his friends. He realizes they will never understand.
He's done with them.
So he essentially turns away from them and delivers his closing argument directly to the court of heaven. He starts by remembering his past glory, contrasting it with his present ruin.
The contrast is heartbreaking. In chapter 29, he remembers when the friendship of God was in his tent. He uses this incredibly rich agricultural metaphor.
That's the metaphor.
He says, when my steps were washed with butter and the rock poured out streams of oil for me, it signifies an abundance so great that even the barren rocks seem to produce wealth. He recalls going to the city gate.
Let's explain the city gate, because that wasn't just a door and a wall. It was the ancient equivalent of the courthouse, the city council, and the town square all combined.
Yes, to sit in the gate meant you were an elder, a judge, a civic leader. When Job arrived at the gate, the young men hid themselves in respect, the aged stood up, the princes stopped talking.
He commanded total respect.
He was the ultimate pillar of society. But he points out that it wasn't just pomp and circumstance. He used his immense power for good. He was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame.
A champion for the weak.
He was a father to the needy. And he says he literally broke the jaws of the unrighteous to pluck the prey from their teeth. He was a proactive champion of justice.
But then chapter 30 hits, and the reality of his present condition is laid bare. Now, he is mocked by young men whose fathers he wouldn't have trusted to sit with his sheepdogs.
This is a complete reversal.
He is an outcast, driven from society, a brother to jackals, and a companion to ostriches. He is in relentless physical agony, his skin turning black and peeling off.
Which makes his final oath of innocence in chapter 31 so powerful. This isn't just a guy saying, I didn't do anything wrong. He lays out a stunning, comprehensive ethical manifesto.
Yeah, he really gets into the details.
It proves that his righteousness wasn't just external compliance to laws, it was deeply internal.
Let's look at the specifics of that oath, because the standard he holds himself to is staggering. He starts with his internal thoughts. He says he made a covenant with his eyes not to look lustfully at a young woman.
Right.
He demands to be weighed in an even balance. And then he issues these conditional curses upon himself. It's a formal legal structure.
Yes. the if-then-oath structure.
Yeah.
He says, if I have walked with falsehood, if my heart was enticed by my neighbor's wife, if I ignored the cause of my male or female servant,
And then what?
then let my crops be rooted out. Let my arm fall from my shoulder blade. Let my arm be broken from the bone. He is putting his own body, his own livelihood on the line to swear before the divine court that he acted with justice.
And what is truly remarkable, and I want you to define a term here for us, is the reasoning he gives for his ethics, particularly regarding his servants. Remember, this is the ancient Near East. Slavery, rigid class structures, people treating other people as property. That was the absolute, unquestioned norm.
Completely normal back then.
But Job says, if he despised the cause of his servant, what will he do when God rises up? And then he asks, did not he who made me in the womb make him? Did not one fashion us in the womb?
This is a breathtaking ancient statement. He is recognizing their shared ontological status.
Wait, unpack ontological status for a second. We're talking about the very nature of their being, right?
Exactly. Ontology is the study of being,
Yeah.
of what it means to exist. In the ancient world, kings and wealthy masters were often thought to have a different ontological status than slaves.
Like they were a different species.
They were literally considered a higher form of being, closer to the gods. But Job rejects that completely. He says, no, the master and the servant share the exact same fundamental nature of existence because we were fashioned in the exact same way by the exact same creator.
That's radical for the time.
He is asserting a radical, universal human equality. He didn't treat his servants fairly just because it was a polite thing to do. He treated them fairly because he recognized they were equal human beings. That echoes the deepest, most progressive human rights concerns thousands of years before modern declarations of human rights.
He goes on to swear he didn't make gold his hope. He didn't secretly rejoice when his enemies were ruined. He didn't hide his transgressions out of fear of the crowd.
It's all incredibly thorough.
It is a portrait of a man of supreme structural integrity whose morality was rooted in a profound reverence for the Creator and a deep empathy for his fellow humans.
So if we look back at the massive amount of ground we've covered today, from the specific economic fragility of us to the psychological trauma of the overlapping messengers, through the toxic positivity of his friends, and finally to the search for wisdom and justice, we have to synthesize this.
Right. How does this shape how we see and live today?
Well, think about that reflection we brought up earlier. Examine your own hedge. Are your ethics, your kindness, or your faith dependent on things going well for you? Are you good because it's profitable?
That's the hard question.
And more importantly, when you see someone else suffering, catch yourself. Do you immediately try to figure out what they did wrong to deserve it?
We all do it.
Do you play the role of Job's friends just to build a psychological wall against the terrifying randomness of the world?
That is the daily work. To abandon the just world fallacy and embrace the empathy that sitting in the ashes truly requires. Now, before we go, there is one final fascinating thought we haven't touched on yet. Throughout his agony, as Job realizes the sheer asymmetry of his situation, he is a mortal man trying to argue a legal case against an infinite, invisible God. He cries out for an umpire.
Yes. In some older translations, like the King James, it's called a daysman.
A daysman.
He longs for someone who can lay a hand on both him and God. Someone who can bridge the infinite gap and mediate the dispute equally. And because he feels he is dying without justice, he wishes his words could be inscribed with an iron pen in the rock forever, as a permanent monument to his innocence.
And the incredible irony is, by being recorded in this very book, they were inscribed forever. We are sitting here reading them thousands of years later.
Furthermore, Job ends his massive multi-chapter defense in chapter 31 by saying, "Behold, here is my signature. Let the Almighty answer me."
Wow.
He writes up his legal indictment, signs his name to it, and demands a hearing. He demands that the universe explain itself.
He puts his name on the line. What happens when the universe finally answers back? How does the Almighty respond to a man who demands an explanation for his suffering? That is a question for you to ponder until the whirlwind arrives.
It's a big one to sit with.
That's the heart of this section. This is Wisdom for the Present, where understanding leads to clarity, and clarity shapes how we see and live. We'll see you in the next episode.